Thanks.
Good. Okay.
I've been taking notes, so I'll get the rest of the meeting off of the YouTube recording.
Thanks so much, Alice. Sorry about that.
And Jackie, while Richard is on the subject, I'll do everything I can to help you out, and we'll talk quite a bit, and I hope you can benefit from the experience I've had here. And I'm glad you're doing this. Thank you for doing this. And Ron, thank you for your years of service.
Yes, Ron.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jackie, I'll help
Appreciate
you
it.
out.
Okay.
Thank you.
And for the other committee chairs, we have had the Labor Committee being run by John Rowe, but John regrettably is no longer with us. John died within the last month. Ellis later on will be giving a eulogy for John Rowe, who's a longtime and important member of this club, and we're very sad to hear that he has passed away. Ellis is basically the executor of his estate, and will be appropriate to give a eulogy during his political director's report later on in this meeting. Okay, so do we have anybody that we feel would be appropriate, either you yourself volunteering or someone that you can think of that would be a chair of the Labor Committee?
Well, I think that although Greg Bonato isn't on this call, he frequently is. And I've always just asked Greg what's doing with labor, and he's frequently forthcoming, and if there's something important. And Greg sits on the Central Labor Council and is, of course, the political director of, not the political director, the business manager, which is the top guy in local 595. So we could make it kind of Greg's responsibility. But
so we can have Jackie ask him if he wants to be the head of a labor standing committee. That would be good. Okay, let's move on to
John.
Right. Let's move on to the Environmental Committee, which has been head by Van. Van, are you interested in continuing as the head of the chair of that standing committee?
Yes.
Very good. Okay. That's all we need basically, is for people to affirm if they're in that position. And so then that's official for this coming year. So these will be the standing committee chairs for those committees. We need to firm up someone for membership, and we'll ask Samir. Maybe Jackie can ask Samir if he wants to continue. If he says yes, then that will be fine. The way this works is if we have an opening and we have someone that's nominated, then we put in the nomination now and we vote on it for the next meeting. So we will be voting yes or no on Greg Bonato. And if he isn't elected or doesn't want to hold the job, we can vote on any successive meeting for not only his chair position, but other chair positions. Okay, so that's all of the parliamentary stuff. Do we have any questions or any comments on the elections? Okay, let's move to the major topic, which is fascism in America and what we can do about it, a group discussion. So Ellis, at this point, do you know if our guest speaker is able to join us from his bed?
Apparently he's not shown. I spoke to him sometime this afternoon about 2:30. He sent me a text message earlier in the day, said that he was feeling under the weather, tested himself, and found that he was positive. So he tested positive for COVID today. And
Oh, that's no fun.
he also said, I'm going back to bed. And when I spoke to him, he was very iffy. So I told him not to worry about it, that Ron and I could probably handle it. And he apparently has not shown up. And in fact, I think he told me he has joined the club. So we will get to hear from him eventually.
So he didn't want to talk to
Yeah,
us from bed?
Ron went someplace else, so I think I'll start this thing.
Okay,
I've done some, is that okay with you, Ron?
yeah, let's do that.
Okay, if you see me blink on and off, it's because Comcast is doing this to me.
Okay,
Okay, okay. There are 10 things that identify fascism or define fascism. The first one is what we call a mythic past, that things were so much better in the past and we have to make America great again. It's a myth. America was never any better than it is now, and it has always been great. But that is part of the myth that they try to portray, and that's why we see MAGA. The second thing is the use of propaganda and getting us used to listening to lies. And when I heard this, what happened in my head was, I said, he lied about how many people attended his inauguration, remember?
Yep.
And we said, why is he lying about this? There's the evidence there. And he was making the public used to his lying. And the public gets used to the lies and gets used to being lied to and doesn't trust the media. And anytime they hear something that they disagree with, they just say fake news. Then there's the third thing, anti-intellectualism and rejecting science. And that probably cost 500,000 American lives over the last several years due to COVID because of the lying about science. But Hitler said, science is good if it serves the state and serves my purpose. If not, forget about it. He didn't say that. He wasn't from Brooklyn. Okay, so there's rejection of science. Then there's hierarchy. Those who deserve and those who don't deserve. And if you believe that you're part of the group that deserves, and what you deserve is being taken away from you by those who don't deserve through entitlements, then you're going to be angry at them. And that goes to the next one, which is victimhood, that you have to feel victimized by those people who are undeserving but taking. So if they're on welfare, they don't deserve to eat. They don't deserve to have a roof over their heads because they're undeserving, and you are deserving, and you're being victimized because your taxes are paying for their meals. And what goes along with that is law and order. The law is that it affects them, but doesn't affect you. And we see that in that they think that they're above the law. January 6th, they think they're above the law. Trump, look how much trouble he's in, but has always thought he's above the law. And Hitler was above the law, but the people at the bottom, the thems, they're not above the law. And then there's sexual anxiety, straights versus gays, straights versus LGBTQ, I should say. And this threat to masculinity and threat to the father as the patriarch. And then there's city versus rural, Sodom and Gomorrah, that the cities are places where them live.
Okay, I think you're being muted. Does anyone else have him not coming through in the audio?
I'm the same place.
Right. So Ellis, you're not coming through.
Okay.
Oh, now you are.
Now you're good.
And the last point is something written across the tops of the gates of the concentration camps. Work will make you free. And the idea is that the undeserving should be forced to work because that will make them free. Anyway.
Right. Can I add another little something to the definition of fascism? Okay, it's a far right and an authoritarian, a strict hierarchical form of government that is ultra nationalistic. It's us versus them. It's a political ideology and a movement. And it was very strong in the 1930s in Europe in particular, and in Latin America. And there was very many proponents in the 1930s in America also. And two of the strong characteristics are that it has a dictatorial leader. So this is very anti-democracy. And it's a centralized autocracy, which means that there are major power figures in the center that control things, including the economy. So it's a centralized, far right, us versus them, nationalistic form of government, which is a form of authoritarianism, which is characterized by the rejection of political plurality. So they don't believe in the power of the majority, okay? And the use of strength and power to establish and preserve political power. So it's a sense of power that controls from top down, and it has particular adherents. There's characteristic personality traits for the people who are rulers and those who are followers. Okay. That was my bit there for the definition.
But I think it's worthwhile, knowing how autocracies evolve. I think Tim Snyder was pretty good at explaining how democracies devolve into fascism, and what are some of the symptoms and characteristics of that trend. I think it's also important to remember that democracies, as far as Western civilization especially, is a relatively new thing. I mean, we were the ones that started it, Western civilization, but it's a relatively new thing, certainly across the world. And many countries without the necessary civic education and civic involvement devolve pretty easily into autocracies because the people don't know their role in their own government. And, that's one of the problems that we have today is that there's essentially an ignorance of what government is doing, what it's doing for the individuals in society. The people who know what government is doing for them are the relatively well-to-do. And everybody else is kind of like running around confused, hoping that their orientation and ideology and political affiliation will benefit them. And that's about all they know.
Right, and there is a real distinct difference between those who know and the characteristics of those who know and who those are in power are to keep the information and keep the power away from those that are basically the subjects of the dictator and the subjects of the autocracy.
Yeah,
Could come.
the issue is not, the leadership doesn't need to know much of anything. In fact, they can make knowledge an actual deficit, in the political order. That when you can have somebody like Trump and the rest of the Republicans wall-faced lying to the, to the American people, and them, basically condescending or, letting it happen without protest. That's a symptom of what power can do in the greater scheme of things. It's that kind of dumbing down of the political process is why we get people like Trump.
That's right. Ellis, did
Robin,
you?
I see your, sorry, Ron, I don't mean to
Richard,
interrupt.
go ahead.
Robin, I see your hand up, so go ahead.
Oh,
Hi.
we're all.
I just want to toss this into the conversation. I recently watched the series Dope Sick, and watching what happened with the Sackler family. And I thought for a long time, how could the government have been okay with allowing that to happen? And who benefited by this enormous population of people with a very serious addiction problem? And I started to get this feeling, and I don't know if I'm right, I just wanted to share it and kind of hear your views. I started to get this feeling that drug addiction and fascism seem to go hand in hand, in that it's very easy to convince a person who doesn't have the capacity to face their addiction, their loss of income, their loss of focus. It is very easy to convince a person in pain that somebody other than themselves is responsible for that pain. And, thinking about, I wasn't a part of it in the 60s, I was just an infant, but thinking about how drugs were really dropped off into cities, and that there doesn't seem to be a sincere effort to me to really keep drugs out of the country, out of the United States. It seems to me that for all of the screaming and yelling about the borders, that the people who are dying in trucks and the people who are being smuggled in are coming in service to a drug trade. They're not coming in to be, 9 to 5 workers at Walmart getting into Social Security. They're coming in to do work that is off the books. So it's going to be drugs. And so anyway, just that's my thought. And, I feel that the way we handle the sex trade is also very similar, because people should have autonomy and a right to do business and to do it with safety and with health. I'm not saying that it's my decision to engage in it. I'm saying people who choose to engage in it should have the right to have safety and health in any choice that they make. The problem is how quickly it becomes an exploitation. And I think that that's sort of the secondary thing, which is when you introduce drugs, you introduce desperation and you lower standards. And that's where you get people who are willing to degrade themselves. And, I think there's people out in the world who are very wealthy and conduct a private business and do so with safety. And they are not people who are suffering from desperation. So I'm not saying that anybody who is engaged in a sex trade is desperate. I'm saying that that commingling of allowing drugs into a location, I think I get this feeling that the underlying reason it's being done, or look the other way, is it's creating people who are easy to lead. So thank you. Oh, I see, Ron, that you're agreeing with me. Okay, now I'm going to take my hand down, and I want to just tell you all 2 other things. I'm having a problem with my video card, and my light for being overheated is going off. So I might have to drop and come back. It won't be anything anybody said. And the other thing I would like you to know is I'm the president of the ISC Squared, which is a security organization chapter for the East Bay with about 600 members. And part of our charter is that I cannot simultaneously participate in a political seat, which is why I never volunteer. And this will be my last year as the president. It'll be the 7th year running. But everybody knows who I am. Everybody knows there's never a moment that I'm not wearing a Biden-Harris or a Kamala Harris or an Eric Swalwell. Everybody knows that I'm a massive K-High Kamala Harris supporter, that I'm on phone banks all the time, but I cannot have my name in this board or be on committees until I relinquish my role. With that said, I have a collection of 600 people, mostly in the age group 45 to 80, with a high degree of interest in policy. And I invite people to come speak. And sometimes the people speaking come from the Democratic Party. One time at a conference, Steve Vo, who worked for Kamala Harris, is a part of our policy committee. So I find ways to bring message to the security professionals in the East Bay, but I just wanted to say, because of the vote tonight, I always feel awkward not volunteering, but I technically cannot. So that's it. Congratulations, Jackie, for taking the president's role, and to all the people who are working for this very important endeavor. Closing mic, putting hand down.
Very good. Good comments. Okay, very good. Ellis, did you want to continue with what you have?
Yeah, I wanted to break into the part of what we can do about this. And
Oh, well, let's talk a little bit more about some of the other nature of fascism and the people. And then we'll get to what we can do. Do we have anybody else that wants to talk about the nature of it? Judy?
I don't know about the nature, but I think there's a certain neediness of people who fall into that. And there is some sort of victimization, and the fact that somebody is taking something away from you, and the scapegoat is a convenient target, right? Whether it's an intellectual or a liberal or whatever it is, or the media, you know. And I think and I don't know where it's coming from. I guess a recession or inflation can cause it, but it's not new, okay? It's been around since the beginning of time, but what I find very scary is that there's been democracies, there's been Greece, there's been Rome, maybe not like ours, but they were certainly for their time democratic, and they passed. And we're only a couple of hundred years old, and it looks like we're ready to fall apart. And what to do about it, I don't know. Address the fear, I don't know.
Right. So in a fascistic society, there's a particular kind of economics. It's a mixture of capitalism and socialism both.
Yeah.
But once again, it's structured from the top. So if we're thinking about really what we might be falling into, there's an advocacy of self-sufficiency in the past fascistic states that we've had, but an orientation towards profit. So it's kind of a combination of an authoritarian kind of totally crushing society, and a little bit of democracy and a little bit of personal freedoms to do what you want to do. But it also, fascism in general, supports government subsidies of corporations over people. So this is one of the things that, that makes sense right now, because there's so many corporations that are paying no taxes at all and getting tremendous subsidies. In essence, they're robbing the treasury. And so this, of course, is more so in the Republican administrations than the Democratic administrations. We're trying to turn that around a little bit in the Biden administration by going for a minimum tax on corporations. I think what we need to do also is we need to, if we're going to go to talking about how next step is talking about how we how we change things, what we can do about it, which is what Ellis was leading into. I think there's two things that we ought to keep in mind, is that one, there are two different kinds of people that we're going to be working with. We're going to be working with the controllers, the leaders, and then we're going to be working with the followers. And if we're going to change things, it helps to know a little bit about the authoritarian personality, the leaders. These are the dictator types. Okay. They're generally pretty conventional. They're anti-liberal. They're basically anti-democracy. They believe in generally that there's this sense of an absolute natural order to the world and to the universe, and that can be conveyed and splayed out in particular fashion, and there isn't really any kind of individual interpretation that's allowed for the rules. Like Martin Luther, his whole revolution was that, yes, we want to follow some particular set of standards, and yes, those seem to be natural and absolute and given to us by a God, but we can all individually interpret those. We can all have our own ideas and our own sense of what freedom is, what democracy. If for the authoritarian person, for the fascist, that really doesn't exist. Things are more black and white. It's cut and dried. I'm right, you're wrong. There's very little gray in between. And all of them, many of them have a sense of responsibility, that they feel that they're, in essence, appointed by virtue of the fact that either they're very smart, or that they're rich, or that actually God appointed them to do the right thing, that they have a responsibility to press their point of view over you. And therefore they're correct, and they don't care what you think, because they've been appointed by God. You know, Calvin says that you're appointed, you're going to go to heaven if you're rich or you're successful. That's part of that whole kind of, I'm on top, you're on the bottom, I'm right, it's natural, God says it's good. So it's very hard to get into those people, and they really think in sort of, you know, cut and dried ways. The followers, the people who are submissive, have a different kind of a personality thing. They also believe in an absolute truth. They believe that the Bible is either the Bible is 100% right, or that the Quran, or that the other religious text, or whoever they're talking about, that this is a natural right order. There's not really room for individual interpretation. There's just one way to think about the universe. There's one way to think about politics. And I'm sort of going to have to go along with that stuff. Again, black and white. Second, they look to authority figures and authority books for guidance. And why? Because generally they have a history of being out of power. They don't have much power. They don't have much money. They see themselves as underlings. You know, they don't want to get crushed or eaten by the lion. Okay, demographically, lower education, lower economics, lower sense of ability to see themselves as able to help evolve, grow economically, or grow spiritually. They're sort of on the downside. These are the people that are easily manipulable. These are the people that may not necessarily feel that they know enough about politics or economics to be able to make the decisions themselves and be able to vote, or they don't care. So those, and they distrust people that are not like them. And they distrust the highly educated, or people who speak in an educated fashion. So there's different kinds of, there's these submissive people, and then there's the dominant people who think they have the right to rule. So if we're going to try to change these people and change the institutions that they have, it's good to know the kinds of biases If you're gonna change somebody, you gotta know who they are.
Well,
That's
whose
the
life
last
got
I read.
Whose life got better because of Trump? What middle class or below middle class person life who's, let's say, a Trump voter, where did it improve? What rising tide lifted his ship? It didn't happen.
That's correct.
No, but what he was able to do was to clearly illustrate to some faction of society who the other was.
Mm,
And so if you've got a lot of people that are lost and in despair, being disconnected,
Yeah.
not well served by government or institutions, you know, if they're somewhat stranded, as it were, from the American dream, you know, they don't see a way of, you know, improving their lives very much. You know, those are the ones that are most vulnerable because they don't know what to believe in.
yeah.
And if somebody comes along and says, yeah, I hear you're down and out, but you're better than this guy, Black, Mexican, whatever else. And so that's where the graduation becomes, you know, they get an uplift from that. And all he has to do is keep blaming somebody else for your, you know, worries, you know,
Yeah.
that the Mexicans and the people in, you know, coming across the border, you know, they're not bringing them their best. They're bringing drugs, and all of that's false. You know, like to the woman earlier that was talking about, you know, how porous our borders are. You know, if you really get into the border situation, it's extremely complex. But overall, the increase in drug use is because of the ease of access and cost. And that's the main reason people are turning to things like fentanyl, even as dangerous as it is that it's bloody cheap and it still gets people high. You know, so the people that have the opportunity to escape their misery briefly or whatever, you know, if they've got nothing else to lean on, you get a drug problem or an alcohol problem or whatever else. But the people that don't have that social connection, the connection with others, you know, they may turn to religion to find some way of belonging. They may turn to drugs to ease the pain, you know, but the reality is that it's government's responsibility in a democracy to look after people and not to take care of them, but to make sure that government is doing the best they can to serve the people that put them in office. And the Republican Party has no interest in that.
Right.
I think that's what you have to do is that you have to break that prejudice. You have to say, you know, it ain't about you versus them. It's about what we can do together. And you got to stop listening to these people because you just can't trust them. And they're going to bend you like a straw, you know, to their way of thinking. And you have to stand up to it.
Thanks, man. I see a few hands up, so I'll call on Robin first and then go to Jackie next. No worries.
Good comments.
Yeah, I mean, you really have me thinking about a lot of broader issues. I really like listening to you, Van. So I have a thought about this, making a statement that, you know, we're going to end Social Security. And if you look at the most Republican percentage of Republican voters, the red states, these are environments where you get a lot of people who will say, well, we will take care of our own. And you know, we don't want to pay for the city folk. We have big houses. We keep grandma and grandpa with the grandchildren. So we will take care of our own, but we don't want to pay for those millions of freeloaders in the city. So that's how they're able to manipulate the idea of taking away retirement. And it's also how they're manipulating these people, I think, to look the other way when they say things like, we don't need vaccines, and we'll risk it. And the reason they can get away with saying something like, well, we'll risk it, is until somebody in your own household dies, there's very good control in those states over what the media says. They have complete domain over the radio stations. And, you know, I used to do audit for journal communications with 27 major radio stations. And at one point, I think my politics must have shown, you know, like your slipper showing. And I was just walked off. I was just walked out of the account. And 6 months later, Ed Bradley came in and did an expose on payola. But it was really bigger than that. It wasn't about having, you know, songs played with no financial record, which was all I was looking at. Like, you know, if you charge for advertising, we should be able to do apples and apples accounting here. I was walked out the door at that moment. What it really came down to was, and I didn't realize what I was standing on, was control over messaging and control over broadcast, and how really powerful it is. It's not even about television, it's about radio. So, so, you know, I started thinking about this, Dan, when you were speaking, because I think sometimes we have a perception of fascism. And when you then take the story and you go out to those states, it's all truism. And the minds of the people who are appearing to support fascism, that's not what's in their mind. I think in their mind, first off, they're not seeing how many people are dying. We know that more Republicans than Democrats died, but I don't think that's what they're hearing on the news. And I don't think they're watching our network news broadcasters either. I think they're watching local stations. So this brings me to the what are we going to do about it? And I think we need to put a lot of money into Black-owned businesses and focus a lot on radio, because we, you know, everybody wants to have a podcast, but these voters are not listening to the slick new podcasts. They're just listening to radio like they always have. So those are some thoughts that I have about my experience of what I think we need to do about it. And I actually have a job working with a consulting firm to assist in reaching young people who want to get involved with the party, and trying to figure out a way to get support to them, because you know, people in red states, young people in red states, they need champions to evolve their platform and their messaging. This is something else that I think about in terms of what are we doing about it, because if you go into an already blue state, there's a lot of resources to raise and bring Democrats into Congress. If you go into the red states, there's just so much stacked against a bright young person, even knowing what they need to know to run for Congress. I mean, we need more. That's just a different topic. You know, I'm starting to slide into the, like, what are we going to do about it?
That's the part of the presentation that I was about to make. So
I'll lower my hand and I will turn off my mic.
Thanks, Robin. We'll turn it over to Jackie next. I see your hand.
Just a quick comment. One of the things I think is attributed to people's beliefs of things that are false is that these people tell them what they want to hear. And so it doesn't matter if it's true or false, but it's reinforcing their beliefs. So they already have a belief. There was a really good study about an airplane crash, and they went back and studied the psychology about why the pilots did what they did. And it came down to the pilots were expecting a certain response. And even though the equipment was telling them something different, they kept falling into the same trap and falling into what they believed was the truth instead of the technology telling them what was really happening. And I think that happens a lot with Fox News and these other programs. They're just reinforcing what these people want to believe. And one of the things I'd like to see is us petitioning and going after some of these media agencies like Fox News or whatever, and maybe, going to the cable companies and demanding that they drop them from their lineup. I don't know if that'll work, but obviously, we need to do something, because there are some media outlets that are just pure liars. And it's hard to convince people that they're not when they're telling them what they want to hear.
Yeah, that's very important. Those media outlets, tell them what they want to hear, regardless of the truth. And most of them know that a lot of what they're putting out on Fox Network and those other right-wing media are not accurate, and they don't care.
Ellis, you're up.
Ellis, go for it. Let's bring it formally
Also,
into what we can do.
Did Ellis freeze?
Oh, no, I didn't freeze. I
was-
let my wife go.
I didn't finish. In some parts of the United States and even in California, they don't get PBS. They just get one channel of news, and that's
Wow.
Fox. I mean, even in the gold country, and that's not that far from here. You go further away from the cities and you're just dependent on what the communication is.
Okay, I'll start. There are 5 basic things we can do about fascism. The first thing is learn from history. And here's where we've got a local issue. We have a MAGA Republican just elected to the San Ramon School Board. I asked him what he's going to teach about, what he would allow taught about the Holocaust. And he really didn't have an answer. But what we teach the kids is determined to a large extent, particularly the controversial stuff, is determined by a large extent by who's on the school board. What that orientation is going to be. Is it going to be, don't teach anything about things that will make white kids feel bad? Or are you going to teach the truth about history? And we have to be teaching the truth about history. We have to get our history straight and make sure that the school districts are getting it straight too. So maybe we can do some pressuring on our school boards to make sure that kids know about the Holocaust, know about the Ku Klux Klan in America, know about fascism in America, know about what's going on, even know about January 6th. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that we should be proud to be anti-fascist. When the fascists show up at the farmers market, we have to stand up to them. When they show up en masse, any place, we have to counter those demonstrations. We have to stand up to the fascists and declare ourselves anti-fascist, not walk away and not get into it. The most important thing, I believe, is present a vision that is something that will replace the MAGA vision. MAGAs believe that they can go back in time and change America and make it great again, and it'll be all Disneyland and the happiest place on earth. And we have to present a progressive picture to them as to where we're going, not just say the Republicans are a bunch of liars and you shouldn't vote for them. That's not enough. We have to say, this is the reasons to vote for the Democrats. These are the reasons you should be more progressive. This is the world that you're going to leave to your grandchildren. And this is why it's going to be better than that other world. So we have to present that picture. One of the other things that we have to do is the progressive Democrats and the centrist Democrats, and there are plenty of them, and there are plenty of them in this club. I've met many of them. They're good people. We have to get together with them and say, we have a common enemy, and stop fighting amongst ourselves. And lastly, anti-fascist legislation. In Europe, they have rules against hate speech, which you don't have it here.
We've
Blake,
lost you. Can't hear.
I don't know. Let me just say
Okay.
a few things about what Ellis said about the school board. School boards don't have a whole lot of discretion with regard to curriculum that's dictated primarily by the state on what things they can choose from primarily. And the same thing even applies to books and libraries. The state has an approved list of books that can go into a school library. And, you know, there are going to be books on there that some people might find objectionable, you know, but, you know, that's not much to the discretion of the school board. All those processes are guided by the state. And so if you get a, you know, a whack job that's run for school board, you know, saying whatever it takes to get elected, they don't necessarily have much power to change how schools run. What they do have discretion on is where they can spend money.
Good. Ellis, are you ready? How's your sound? He's not there yet. Let me talk about, Ellis has got a quick list. I've got a quick list also of what we can do. This is sort of in general, okay? One, I've got 6 quick points that I'll just list. We can vote in good politicians who are democracy oriented rather than authoritarian oriented. Okay, and we can help promote those candidates at the club level that we're doing. Okay. Second, we can promote egalitarian laws rather than laws that that favor the elite. Third, we can support democratic clubs and organizations, including ours and the other local clubs. Like Ella said, let's work together. And also, if you don't have much mobility, you can support online the Move On organization and Common Cause. Those are 2 very powerful, and those are led by good progressive people.
Indivisible.
Fourth, indivisible. Fourth, non-abusive parenting and leadership. We need to be non-authoritarian in our way that we raise our children, because if we raise them in an authoritarian, mean, kind of arbitrary, disciplinary way, they turn out to be those passive subjects that are accepting of authoritarianism and fascism. Okay. Fifth, we need to talk to neighbors and friends and people who are around us and relatives and try to convince them to be a little bit more progressive, using a language that they understand, working on the basis of showing that we have a lot of commonalities rather than we're different, and to be able to see that we're trying to work together to whatever goals we can find are common between us. And finally, for those of us who use the media, we need to write, speech, and teach pro-democracy thoughts. Like Ella said, we have to present our vision, we have to present our agenda, and we have to do that actively rather than passively. Those are my 6 points. Van?
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, from your first thing about electing officials, it's important to remember that school boards and city councils are the farm clubs for major offices across the state. And I think it's important to encourage younger people to run for those offices and not just the old fuddy-duddies that have always been there. And the other thing that's important is, you know, not just talking about progressive values and ideas, but creating a different kind of vision. You know, talk to the vision of what it means to be a good Democrat and supportive of institutions and believe that we are a strong and vibrant nation, you know, and that you can have differences of opinion on budgets and things like that. That's okay. But we all want to be moving in the same direction, and that's up.
Ellis, how are we doing? Is Ellis back online?
Ellis, you're on
He
mute.
may have muted himself. Oh, there he is.
I just muted myself. I was just listening, and I think we
You-
covered all of the points. The last part that I think was cut off is that the legislation that's needed is hate speech legislation, sort of they have in Europe. There used to be that equality.
We're losing you.
Sometimes stopping your video will help if you're having bandwidth issues because of the rain.
You're going to blame it on God?
I'm going to blame it on Comcast.
No, I'm going to blame it on Comcast. I give up. Comcast has beaten me for tonight. So go for it, Ron.
Okay. Well, what do we have? Judy, you had your hand up?
No, must have been the rain.
Must have been the rain. That's right. Okay. So do we have any more comments from the floor?
Actually, I do think that the Democrats, the candidates, have to show a little bit more oomph and, a little bit stronger. I'm not saying to attack a Republican, but they can certainly be stronger and say, this guy's lying to you, okay, or whatever, or be, instead of, they're a little bit, they're kind of namby-pamby, many of them. And a lot of them, and they don't come across as, you gotta fight, you gotta bring a gun to a knife fight, okay?
Okay, I hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oftentimes, because we're so nice and egalitarian, we don't want to step to the more aggressive moves. We don't want to
Right.
cross the line and start lying and cheating and join them. But I agree, we have to be more active in our presentations. And the
Yeah.
idea of presenting a positive vision that both Ellis and Van are talking about is important. And I tend to speak in terms, because I'm a college professor and I teach some of these things, and we talk about them in terms of structures and lists and all of those kinds of presentations. But that's not the people who we're trying to change and convince. They don't want
Right.
those kinds of arguments. They want things presented by people that are like them, using their language, because of the fact that Trump uses very, very poor, like 8th grade language. I mean, he's appealing, and that's part of his strength, is that the people who like that and understand that and are at that level, relate to that and figure, yeah, here's a leader that's something like me. And the people who are less and less involved in politics, and the swing voters are less and less involved in politics, we've got to hit them at their level with their language and the ideas of being very concrete, using action verbs,
Yes.
using imagery. Those are important things in terms of our communication type and nature.
I think you're talking about charisma.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
But my friend Alan here frequently says on our Friday coffee that we were mistaken by following Michelle Obama's advice, which says when they go low, we go high. When they go low, we kick them in the balls. That's what we should do.
I think Obama had incredible charisma. I think that Hillary Clinton was the wrong candidate against Trump. Yeah.
She didn't hit him.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Robin, I see your hand up, so I'll go to you.
So I did a lot of calling into red states last year. And then, we talk about eating our own dog food. For me, it was having the courage to raise with my Richmond family issues that were on the ballot without alienating them, because, it was enough I stole their Republican son and turned him into a Democrat, and he married a Jew and all that. So the fact that we have you know, a great family and a lot of love between us. I don't want to wreck that. But what I thought was interesting was I could speak to every single woman in my family, my mother-in-law in particular, about the fact that men were discussing our private issues as a form of distraction in Congress. And that it wasn't that the women were asking them to do that. It was a common feeling of how embarrassing it is as women to hear our private issues being used as a weapon, and that it would be our preference, all of our preferences, to keep our issues private. That if we want to do this in our church or our temple or our mosque with our doctor, that this is not of men's concern. And what I found really interesting about that is it dimmed the fire that they had for the Republicans speaking that way. And I feel that it was important for me, in order to hold their attention and to have a good conversation, I needed to be firmly committed to the fact that they were going to be better Republicans. And you know, there's no way you can miss the fact that I am a Democrat. I have a for the people sign on my front window. You cannot miss, no matter where you look at me, my Christmas cards have Go Biden. So there's no way to miss it. But the fact that I can maintain some relationships with family who are Republican is on that issue. I do also have family that no longer speaks to me, and it's painful, you know, to lose family connections over politics. The other thing that I want to point out is people who do not want to pay taxes and who are actively scamming the government will always gravitate towards whatever issue distracts people from the fact that they do not want to pay taxes. And they are anti-government because they're cheaters. So when you look at why did Elon lose $208 billion? Well, we're not laundering Russian money, and the crypto market cannot serve the foreign actors as it was doing before, because that market is being now interfered with. And so my opinion is he lost 208 billion. He pushed 208 billion off the books because it was convenient for a number of parties to do so. And if he had not wanted to move things the way they did, it wouldn't have happened. He wouldn't have bothered with getting involved with Twitter in the first place. So just sort of big picture, when I think about fascism, again, I think that sometimes we miss what's really going on. Like if you go out into the rural area, it isn't that the average family wants to be fascist. They think that the Democrats are fascists. They genuinely are hearing that we are the fascists. So that we want to take away their freedom, we want to take away their freedom of speech, and all these things that are completely not true. So those are my comments. I mean, I'm clearly with you in this fight, and I agree with every word that's been said. I'm just looking for what can I layer into this that hasn't already been said. So those are my thoughts. Lowering my hand because I keep forgetting to do that, and muting.
So I'm intrigued by the moral question, or maybe isn't the moral question, but the moral Aikido technique that Robin was evidently referring to. Now, she listened to the people who had differences of opinion, but called on their moral, compass to understand what they might not quite understand of how the immoral choices are. So men, don't, bother us with our lives. But what's the moral, what's the moral question there that allows men to invade the privacy of women? And I think that kind of changing the direction and perspective is a powerful way of reaching people.
Good. Any more comments or shall we move on? I think this has been a wonderful discussion with some very solid and very concrete things that we can do to combat the Republicans and the fascistic elements in society.
It's even been fun.
Good stuff. All right, Alan, are you ready with the treasurer's report?
Now that I'm unmuted, I am.
Oh, good for you.
Okay. Currently, we started out this month with $2,105.05. We had a net income, we had an income of $215.
Okay.
We had credit card fees of $441, meeting supplies of $23.52, which leaves our total net for the month of a gain of $187.07, leaving us with a total of $2,130.72. We're only showing 24 members, and that's the thing we've got to do, is just send something out, just to remind people to pay their dues. And I'll work on that with somebody to get something done.
Okay, that sounds very good. All right, Central Committee update from Jackie.
An update on the ADEMS, ADEM elections, if you're not familiar with it, are the Assembly District Delegate elections, and the date for signing up to run has closed. The date for getting your mail-in ballot has closed, but if you still want to vote in the election, you can still do so in person. And Ellis and Sharon, it looks like what Rebecca Bauer-Cahan sent out is correct. It looks like it's going to be in Walnut Creek. It's not going to be in Dublin. So we have a couple volunteers. If you guys still want to volunteer, I'll get you all the information. Just let me know if that's still a go. I'm trying to coordinate stuff with Roberta Kreitz.
Right.
Kreitz, thank you. Ellis corrected me the other day. Sorry. So Robbie will be coordinating it all, and I will send out information as well as membership, how to renew, and some of the announcements from this meeting. We'll get that sent out to everybody on the distro. And Ron, if there is anything that you would like me to include as far as the training or the discussion that was just we just went over, especially the action items and the things that we can do that you identified, I will get that in communication to members.
Okay, anything about a Central Committee meeting? Did you have one?
Well, the Central Committee meeting, they did do officer elections. They do their elections the same year that we do. Igor is the chair. He was reelected to chair. And then Tanya Love is vice chair. And Annie Karuga is the recording secretary, and Andy is going to be the correspondence secretary.
Okay.
So those are the leadership. And then we will need to do this year, we'll need to send in all our paperwork for club membership. So it is going to be very important to get our numbers up so that we can maintain our charter with the county.
That's right. Okay, very good. Thank you. Now the political director's report from Ellis, and also a eulogy for our departed member and one of our friends, John Rowe.
Just to add to Jackie's report on the Central Committee, the president of the club usually appoints somebody to represent the club on the Central Committee.
Right, I was going to say
Now,
that.
Jackie's been doing that. Very easily appoint herself, but I
actually think it would be a good idea to bring somebody new in, Ellis, that may actually have would like to run for an elected office down the road. It may be a really good education for them into the process. So we should probably send that out too, offering that up. I'll be happy to attend with whoever's brought in, but we should probably open that up for somebody else. I think I'll have my hands busy with club business.
Good deal. I just wanted to point that out. That's one of your first responsibilities since you're talking about the Central Committee.
Thank you, Ralph.
Anyway, as political director, the first part of this is my job has typically been to bring in speakers when they show up. But in the 15 years I've been doing this, I think this is only the second time speaker didn't show up. And the other time their car broke down on the Bay Bridge. So not a bad track record. But I also would like suggestions from the membership as to who you would like to speak and what kind of topics you would like to address during our meetings. And the better the speaker, the more well-known and the more interesting the topic, the more likely it is that we'll be able to accommodate you. Okay.
I have a speaker's name.
Sharon, these are my notes.
You know.
Anyway, pardon our matter. Stop.
I wanted to write something on your notes. I'm the speaker.
Excuse me. I'm asked to say a few words about my friend John Rowe. John Rowe passed away on January 3rd. The coroner called me up that morning, and we weren't expecting it. I had seen John a few days before that and spoken to him several times. At the beginning of the pandemic, we decided that we would be opposite ends of each other's lifelines. And we kept in touch. John lives about 2 or 3 miles from here, a 5-minute ride, and we kept in touch. John was a good husband. His wife, Susie, is currently in a senior care center in Concord. Sharon and I went over and spoke to her the last couple of Saturdays. Unfortunately, she is suffering from dementia and doesn't quite understand that John passed away. But we plan on visiting her on a regular basis. The home is near my daughter's home, and when we visit my daughter, which is quite often, probably a couple of times a month, we've decided we're going to stop in and see Susie. Susie was a landscape gardener, and at one point John worked with her, and in cleaning out his garage the last few days, he left a hell of a lot of gardening equipment. John was a good friend of mine, of Sharon's, of Alan on here, of Joe Ely, who was our treasurer, and many other people in labor, both in Contra Costa and Alameda County. He was a caretaker for his wife and belonged to SEIU 2015, which is the largest union in California and also probably the lowest paid. It turns out that they negotiate individually with each county as to how much home caretakers are going to be paid. And he was being paid for taking care of his wife. Unfortunately, in order to do that, he had to divorce his wife. And not that they didn't live together until she went into the home a couple of years ago. He was a great helper. He was always trying to help people and worked in the union movement. Was well known in the Alameda and Contra Costa Central Labor Council. And I've heard from people in those councils and their sadness about his departure.
And his job?
And in his job, aside from being a caretaker,
Okay.
Ellis,
Okay.
we lost you again.
We've
Okay,
lost,
now I'm back. Now I'm back. He was a
yeah,
member-
you're back.
he was a member of UFCW, which is the labor union for Safeway, and was a shop steward, in fact, in that labor union.
His
He was
regular-
also a Democrat and a frequent member of the people who go to the conventions, an ADEM or an appointed ADEM. I will personally miss him very much. And I'm sure that the people who know him will miss him. I'm planning on a memorial service, but I haven't set a date. He was a Mormon, and I'm in touch with his minister, who said that we could hold a memorial service in the Mormon church on, it's on Sycamore Valley Road, right off 680 in Danville. So I'll be making an announcement to club members and others that know him about that. But right now I'm dealing with insurance companies, mortuaries, the DMV, and he was in the midst of being evicted.
Alice, why don't you try muting your video and see if we can keep the audio? Alice,
So,
try muting the video.
Yeah, go say it.
I said, we will miss him.
Okay. Can you mute video? Can you go to the top of your screen and mute your video so we can at least have a continuous audio? Okay, we're still not hearing you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Sharon was saying that we will miss him. And the last thing I said, and I think we were cut off, unfortunately, Xfinity is making me crazy. He was a good Democrat and was a delegate to the convention many years. And in fact, I remember him bringing Susie to the convention in a wheelchair. And I believe it was to see Joe Biden. Anyway, as I said, I will miss him. And the people who have coffee with him on Friday will also miss him, and his union brothers and sisters and fellow Democrats in the Tri-Valley Democratic Club.
Yes, there's many of us that will miss him, and that was a wonderful eulogy for a wonderful man with a wonderful life and a lot of help to the community, a real volunteer. Do you have any political stuff from the political director's perspective that you'd like to share with us?
Only that I need some suggestion and perhaps somebody that you would like to see speak at the next meeting. We recently had Rebecca speak at our meeting. What was it? Last meeting? Yeah, it was last meeting. Might be able to get Eric Swalwell in, but we've had him several months ago. Probably Mark DeSaulnier will be able to speak to the club because now he represents a piece of Dublin, and he's my representative, and in fact, Ron's representative also.
Correct.
So, this month, I'll look some other elected official to speak.
Can
to
you
the club.
mute? Can you shut off your video so we can get your audio?
Okay, I will look for other elected officials to speak at the club, but if you hear of an author, somebody who works for the newspaper, somebody interesting you see on television that might be accessible, give me a call. My number is always at the bottom of the emails that we send out. Let me know.
Okay, sounds very good. All right, well, thanks for a good political director's report and eulogy. Do we have any report from, say, any of the standing committees? Follow up on the holiday committee. Let's see, Sharon, do you want to talk a little bit about the holiday meeting that we had?
Yeah, we had and besides the meeting, we had a little celebration, and Rebecca Bauer Cahan came, and Sean Komagai came, and I think we had a good time. We had a lot of desserts, and it was pretty well attended.
Yeah, we had Pamela Price that came
that's
and
right.
spoke, the newly elected district attorney. We had a number of city council people. We had something in the neighborhood of 20 elected officials come to our holiday celebration at the IBEW Hall, in which I and my good friend Bad, we played some Christmas carols off in the corner for about 45 minutes. And we had a few of us join in on the singing, so that was good. Lots of good holiday desserts, good holiday cheer. And we all actually stood around in a circle of many of us, and it was an interesting format. Rather than sitting down or having the speaker up at the chair, we were all equal. We're all Democrats, we're all the people, whether we're elected or we're working to get us elected. And there was a good sense of community and a good feeling and a good sense of sharing. So it was a wonderful cap to the year. We didn't have an actual formal meeting. It was the holiday party, and it was a very good idea. And as usual, our hospitality chair did a great job, so that we all had plenty of good food and drink. Do we have anything from Van concerning the environment? I think you're muted at this point, Van.
The legislative session is back, or is in session, I should say. And we're meeting, I'm working with 350 Bay Area, Contra Costa, I should say. And we're meeting with Glazer's office on Wednesday, one of his people. And then we're trying to set up a meeting with Rebecca Bauer Cahan's, representatives to talk to them about the legislative session. I mean, bill requests have had to be sent in, was it last week? And the closure on bills being assigned will be the middle of next month. So, everything is happening now with regard to any legislation that might come up, but we'll be watching closely through the Climate Center on what pieces of legislation they're proposing and pursuing. In addition to that, we're going to be anxiously anticipating the state's promulgations of the benefits that are delivered for climate issues from the Inflation Reduction Act. All the incentives for heat pumps, electric vehicles, heat pump water heaters, any efficiency projects. So those are things that are incentivized through the IRA, but the state has to administer them and figure out who's going to get a benefit and who isn't, based on median income in the state. So we'll be watching that very closely, and I'll be reporting on that, fill people in on what they're doing at the state level when it comes to bear.
Wonderful. Thank you for that lovely report on environmental.
I have a quick question for
Yes.
Van real quick.
Sure.
Van, regarding the net metering and the supervisor's vote on net metering, or was it, I'm sorry, the CPUC, I think, the Public Utilities Commission. So are we going to do anything? Is there any, anything that we can do to fight this?
Well, the fight has been going on for 2 years now with the utilities not winning everything that they wanted. I mean, basically anybody that's got a solar contract now, the net metering that they contracted with the incentives that were offered by the state is still in effect. There's no graduating of the net energy metering opportunity that anybody with solar now has, which is one of the things that PG&E look for. But basically, there will be there'll be a completely different net, or I should say energy contract with people looking to install solar, going forward. And that's bad because it's probably going to deplete many of the business opportunities for anybody in solar installation in the state. But PG&E, cried, poor, and well, not just PG&E, all the investor-owned utilities cried poor boy, and the CPUC, basically being the mouthpiece and regulator for the utilities, voted to support them, which isn't a surprise. But the fact that Newsom didn't push for a more, say, public interested position from the CPUC was a little bit of a disappointment. We couldn't get him to back any more liberal decisions from the CPUC, and that's just the way it is.
That's regrettable. It's been a long fight. We hate to lose that.
It's going to kill businesses. It's just going to kill these businesses. That's too bad.
Yeah.
Can I
for the most
comment
part.
on that? Can I
It's
comment?
real. Yes.
There are
comment
going to
on-
be additional incentives, like, the federal tax rebate for solar systems is going to go up a little bit from 26 to 30%. But that's about the only advantage the solar contractors have now.
Yeah.
What I understand the issue is that when I generate more electricity than I use, I sell it back to PG&E at 21 cents a kilowatt hour. But at night, when I'm not generating any solar energy, I'm buying it from them at 31 cents a kilowatt hour. They want to change that situation to paying me 5 cents a kilowatt hour. And that's what the new owners of solar energy will be facing. So their break-even analysis is very different than the current solar owners. New owners will not be incentivized as well to go for solar. It doesn't make sense for many people if they're
Right.
going to only get a nickel back and then buying solar at night for 31 cents a kilowatt hour.
Plus when it rains.
Well, yeah, the problem is that essentially PG&E argued for buying your excess electricity at wholesale rates, but continue to sell whatever electricity you need back from them at retail rates. And
Right.
that's what they proposed because they were afraid of losing money in the overall scheme of things, because they get money for not just the power that they sell from individual suppliers, because PG&E owns very little generators. They've got San Onofre and that's about it, and that's probably going to get an extension of at least 5 years, based on CPUC decisions as well. But the gist of it is that PG&E owns CPUC, plain and simple. And unless the governor is willing to appoint people there that aren't so IOU friendly, you're going to continue to see an unbalanced, relationship between the IOUs and the rest of the people that can benefit from solar energy. But when our numbers drop with regard to solar installation, maybe something will happen then.
Okay. Any more questions or comments concerning the environmental? Okay. Sarah, are you with us still from the Communications Committee?
Yep, I'm here and I have no news to report.
Okay, anything in the hopper, any ideas, any people that will be joining you on the committee?
I have nothing to report. We honestly took a hiatus towards the end of the campaign, seeing as a couple of us were running for office.
Okay,
So now
good.
we can revive that, and I'll work maybe with other people like Jackie, Richard, to see if we can recruit anyone for the communications committee and start pumping out some content on our social media and email.
Okay, that sounds good. All right. Okay, and yeah,
Ron,
Ellis.
you created a playlist on our YouTube channel called Political Marketing. And I
Yes.
think we should invite everybody to recommend various videos that have to do with political marketing, have to do with the stuff that we discuss at the meeting, like fascism, but also messaging. And anyway, folks, check out our YouTube channel, and particularly the playlist.
I hope none of
Right.
them have Karl Rove or Lee Atwater as authors.
There you go. Now, yeah, we can take videos up to an hour, presentations. Currently, we have some videos on there now. There was a prep video on authoritarianism and liberty versus democracy, fascism versus liberty and democracy. So if you wanted to have, if you have a good video that you think is worthwhile, why don't you just email to me, and I'll work out with a link, and we can post it on our YouTube channel. So I'll go ahead and volunteer to be a member of the communications committee and help with the videos on this.
Thank you, Ron. We welcome you to the committee. You are an amazing new member, and let's definitely work together on that.
Yeah, that sounds great. We can do lots of video, and it really doesn't cost us anything, and it just makes it available. It's good for us to screen. And some of the videos that relate to the fascism are the podcasts, videos and audios, the podcasts that are done by Rachel Maddow. She stepped down from being a daily reporter to her channel, and is now doing mostly podcasts, and she's focused on fascism. So if you can tune into those, that's wonderful. Maybe somebody can send us a link, or I'll dig out a link and put one or two of those up in our on our YouTube channel. And we will have the political marketing is going to be, quote, a playlist. So when you go to our YouTube channel, you can see that there, under the first menu, they'll say things like home, and then playlist, and then videos. If you click on playlist, that'll list the and show a little thumbnail picture of the videos that are related to that, quote, particular topic. Right now, we have only one topic that is grouped into this basic directory. If you think in terms of Windows and home computers, that's a directory. Those playlists are directories for different kinds of videos that are on the site, and those are grouped together so you can easily see. So the first one that we have is called Political Marketing. Right now, we don't have any videos on that, so it's not going to show up until we get one. You can also, to me, suggest particular playlists, groups, directories, folders for particular kinds of videos. And it doesn't hurt for us to just be a source for people to get to videos to be able to learn. And this is one way to expand our influence and our teaching capability.
Now, you mentioned Rachel Maddow's podcast, Ultra. Do you have that on your website, or do you just have a link to it?
Currently, we don't have anything related to Rachel's podcasts.
I don't think it'll let you do that one, because I actually just shared it on Facebook and I got flagged as stealing content. I got warned. It was like, oh my God.
What?
I know. I've never had that happen.
Facebook was made for content sharing.
I know. But for some reason, Facebook didn't want you to share that podcast. I got flagged. It was weird.
There are various standards that various online rebroadcasting websites have. So, for example, on the one that was redone just recently from the Great Courses, which is like a college level video course company that sells them. When you post a link and upload the actual file for the video cast or a podcast with a solid picture that can go on to it, the content is checked for copyrights. And if Rachel Maddow has it listed that this is a copyrighted material, her podcast, and she doesn't want anybody rebroadcasting that for free, then YouTube will then say that they are not going to allow us to do that, or Facebook will say that, or Instagram will say that, and then not allow us to post it. But what we need to do, we can't really just contact somebody at Rachel Maddow's organization or at the Great Courses and ask them, is it copyrighted material that we can't rebroadcast, blah, blah, blah. So we just upload it and then we wait for their judgment from YouTube, say, for example, to determine whether we can do it or not. So my recommendation is present it to me, and then we'll find out if YouTube is going to nix it simply because they don't want to show copyrighted material.
Ultra is already up on YouTube, posted by MSNBC.
What is Ultra?
Ultra is a podcast talking about Rachel Maddow podcast. Ultra, I've seen it on MSNBC. So
okay.
Yeah, like I said, Ellis, I was surprised that it flagged it because all I did was share the link to the podcast. I didn't upload a video or touch it. I just shared the link, and for some reason they flagged me. I don't know.
Zuckerberg was in mood.
Well, it depends. If MSNBC is paying money to on a general contract with Rachel Maddow, even though it might be $1 or $2, they have a contract, and that's not a violation of the copyright agreements that Rachel Maddow is imposing on her material. So we're not going to find out until we try. So don't let that stop you from sending links and sending videos to me. Okay, let's see. Anything else? Any general announcements from anybody?
I have a, sorry,
go
Jackie, go ahead.
Richard. No, go ahead, Richard.
Okay, I just had two really quick things. One was, I guess this one's more for Jackie. Linda is, I guess, not received her ADEMS. I know you saw it in the chat too, but Linda's not received her ADEMS ballot yet. She said she requested a mail-in ballot and she didn't get one yet. Do you know, like, I feel like
She should have received an email back with a PIN code for voting. If she did not receive an email back after registering, there is a phone number to call, but they may direct her to go in if for some reason that process wasn't totally completed,
Okay, so I should have received something by now. It's possible.
Actually, the day that you signed up, you would have received an actual email confirming that they got your acknowledgement, and then they would have sent you a PIN code, and that tells you that you were registered. I'll dig up the link for you and send it to you. And is there maybe a good time I could call you tomorrow and we can follow up and
sometime in the afternoon.
Okay, I'll dig up the email and send it to you, and I'll give you my number. If you have any questions, we can get on and see if we can figure out what happened to that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
thanks, Jackie. The other thing really quickly was if the new elected officers, and I guess like committee, like Sarah, you too, I guess, can stay on after the meeting. I just want to get some quick things sorted out from the comms end in terms of our Google accounts and stuff like that, since everybody's already on the meeting anyway right now. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, that sounds good. Any other announcements?
Ron, I just wanted to throw out if Ellis needs any, if we need to send anything for John And we need to vote on that to give Ellis approval to, spend some money on flowers or what. I don't know if John's had wishes as far as donations in the event of his passing.
No, I don't have anything like that, and there's no place to send it aside from my house, and please don't do that.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, understood. I just wanted to give you the authority or vote on it if we needed to, because I assume it's going to happen before the next meeting. And
Correct.
again, my condolences. I feel real bad about John.
Yeah, we'll let you know when the memorial service is.
Good. Please include me. Okay, very good. All right, well, let's wrap it up. And we say congratulations to the elected officers, to Jackie, to Alan, to Ellis, and to Richard. Very good. And congrats to those who are continuing on as committee chairs. And I want to say thank you. I was asked to step in as the president when Evan stepped down. And it's been a good 6 or 8 months since I filled in. And it's nice that we have a good, strong president that's coming in. I was willing to continue in the role, but it looks like Jackie is going to do a fine job. So this will be my farewell as president, and I will be just a member, but having good fun and continuing to work. And send me those videos.
Thank you, Ron.
all. Good night.
Good night.
Night.